Okay, to start this recipe off, you need to make your bread dough. So I've got 250 grams of strong plain flour in my bowl, and I'm going to add 1 sachet of fast acting yeast. And because I've only got 250 grams of flour, just half a teaspoon of sugar. And I have 150 mils of warm water and a tablespoon of oil, which I've just put on the top. So I'm going to put some of that water in first of all, just to give this a stir, because I need to make a nice soft bread dough. So be wary about adding all of your water all in one go, because it does depend on the flour that you're using, how much water you're actually going to need. So I am going to need all of that, and possibly in a minute a little bit more. So I've put all of my water in there. It looks a little bit dry, so I'm just going to use my hands and squeeze through and see if I think that will all go together. And I think it will. So I've used all of my water, and I just need to squeeze this dough, make it into one ball, wipe around the edge of the bowl, and end up with one ball of dough in the bottom of my bowl. Okay, my dough is in one ball. I'm just going to put the bowl to one side for a minute while I knead this. And you want to knead this until the mixture is nice and smooth. And I haven't put any flour down on my worktop because I don't actually need to have any flour there to make this dough nice and smooth. I did get the flour out, but I don't need it. If I turn it over, you can see it's quite pitted, and we have to knead this until it's gone nice and smooth. And kneading of bread dough, use the base of your hand, the heel of your hand, fold the dough in half, push it away, turn it round once, do the same thing again, and just keep going until the dough is nice and smooth. And that will take you between 5 and 10 minutes. Okay, my bread is done. It's nice and smooth on the top now, so I'm going to put it back into a clean bowl, cover it with cling film, and leave it to rise until it's doubled in size. And while it's rising, I'm going to make the filling for the Pides. To make the filling for this, I'm going to use half an onion, which I'm just going to chop, and 1 clove of garlic. So half an onion will do, 1 clove of garlic, which you need to finely chop. I've also got 150 grams of lamb mince. Lamb is traditional, so I'm using lamb. You can use other mince if you wish to, but it is more traditional to use the lamb in this recipe. And when I've chopped the garlic, I'm just going to put the lamb, the onion and the garlic together into my smaller frying pan, which is quite deep, and I am going to fry those for about 8 minutes after the lamb is browned. I want the lamb to be really well cooked before I do anything else with this filling. So into the pan I'm going to put my 150 grams of minced beef, half an onion, my clove of garlic, and I'm going to stir that on a nice medium heat until the lamb is browned, and then I'm going to leave it cooking gently for about 8 minutes, and as it cooks, quite a lot of fat will come out of the lamb. Okay, the meat is starting to brown, And you can see that there's quite a bit of fat that's come out of this because it is lamb mince. So I'm just going to get it all completely brown, break it up, get it all brown, mixed up with the onion and the garlic, and then when it's all brown, 8 minutes on a gentle heat to cook through. Okay, the meat hasn't had its 8 minutes yet, but I'm just turning it over, and hopefully you can see it is starting to brown. We do want this meat to brown. It sounds a bit strange, but it's going on the bread, so we don't want it to be too wet, and we want the meat to be browned off. So a little bit longer, but you can see where it's browning. Okay, the lamb is browning, as you can see, and it's had its time, so I'm now going to put in my spices and cook this just for 1 more minute. So in here I am putting a teaspoon of ground cumin. I'm going to add a teaspoon of sumac and just a 1/4 of a teaspoon of allspice, and I'm just going to give that a good stir, and then 1 minute for those ground spices to cook through before I add anything else into this pan. But you can see hopefully that the mince is brown. So 1 minute for those, and then I'll add the next ingredients. Okay, that's cooked for a minute, so the next ingredients to go into this filling are 1 large tomato, which I have chopped. So 1 large tomato goes in, along with a tablespoon of pomegranate molasses. So I just want a good tablespoon of that to give some flavour, and a good squirt of tomato puree, about 1/2 tablespoon. So I'm just going to put it on top of the pomegranate molasses, get a bit more of that off the spoon, and a little bit of water, between 50 and 100 mils of water. So this now I'm going to bring up to the boil. We want this mixture to be quite dry when it's cooked, so it needs to come up to the boil and just be simmered for about 10 minutes. That will cook down the tomatoes, blend all those herbs and spices together, and it should make this into a nice sticky mixture. And I'm going to cover it with a lid while it is cooking. Once it's boiled, I will turn it down, cook it for the 10 minutes, stir occasionally while it's cooking. There we go, and that's boiling already, so that can be turned down, lid on, and cook for another 10 minutes. The bread dough has risen. So the bread dough is nicely risen for the Pides, so I'm just going to flour my worktop, tip that out. Come on, out you come. Want the bread out of the bowl, there we go. So the bread out of the bowl, and then this needs to be knocked back. So I'm just going to knead it quickly, get all that air that's been released by the yeast, all the carbon dioxide out of that, and this mixture is enough to make 2 Pides. So I'm just going to cut this in half and roll the dough out. So a little bit of kneading. It needs to be rolled into an oblong. Not an oblong, an oval. So we need to roll this out into an oval shape, roughly 30 centimetres long. So hopefully as you're rolling it, your bread will will spring back again a little bit. But we want this oval to be roughly 30 centimetres long, so try not to roll it into a circle, because the finished Pides should be a sort of a boat shape. So about 30 centimetres long. I need enough room in the middle to put the filling, so I'm just going put that for the minute on top of a piece of baking parchment on a tray while I roll the second piece. Okay, so I have my two bits of dough rolled. I have my filling here. I've got just 50 grams of feta cheese, but you can see this filling is looking nice and glossy and sticky. So I just need to put some of this filling, I'm going to divide it into two and put half down the middle of each of the Pides. It needs to leave about 1 centimetre from the edge, and if it's a little bit wet still, leave some of the liquid behind, because we don't want to make this too wet. Okay, having got all my filling over these, you just need to turn over the edge of the bread dough, and when you get to the bottom you just twist, and what you should end up is quite a rustic looking sort of boat shape. So just twist the end, which helps to keep the filling inside. Get your feta cheese, crumble that over the top where it can be seen, or where you can get it. So crumble your feta over the top of that, about half over each one. You just want that to enclose the filling a little bit. So I'm just going to put a little bit more on that one. You can, if you wish, sprinkle with a little bit more of the sumac as well before it goes into the oven. And then these go into your oven to bake. If you have time, give them a little while for the filling to rise, but the bread is already starting to rise, so I'm going to shape the second one and then pop these into the oven. I have the two Pides ready to go into the oven with their traditional boat shape, and they are going to take in a hot oven, 200 degrees fan, gas mark 7, and they should only take about 15 minutes to cook until the bread has puffed up and looks golden. Okay, the Pides are cooked. They've been in the oven for 10 to 15 minutes. You can see the bread is puffed up where you folded the edges over, and it's kept all the filling inside. The feta is browned. This is the one that had the extra sumac on the top. So we have some sprinkling of slightly darker patches, which is quite attractive. This one without the extra sumac on the top, the feta is still browned and the meat is still nice and sticky and dry in there as well. So these are sumac spiced lamb Pides.